there is no such thing as a free lunch here. ChatGPT is learning off all of us, and my whole digital profile can be
Gotcha.
sold and then marketed to.
Oof. I need to shake out.
How does that make you feel?
Oof.
What are you noticing in your
Not
body?
good. Not good in my body. I just feel contraction throughout my whole muscular body.
We record this podcast on Gadigal land in Sydney and pay our respects to all First Nations elders, healers, and storytellers. As therapists, we recognise the wisdom that lives in land, body, and spirit, as well as the queerness that runs through nature's veins. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Hello and welcome to Gestalt Me Gently. I'm Dabaco Matt, and I am here with my beautiful compadre and colleague, Matthew Bergen. Matt, how are you checking in today?
Hey, Dabaco. I'm good, thanks. I'm checking in. Feeling kind of all this rain has almost made me kind of wet and moldy. And so what is probably feels like about 10 days straight of rain, I don't know, an eternity. So everything's kind of wet here around the house. And I just feeling kind of a bit of that heaviness of the grayness. There's a lot of gray cloud and stuff like that. So I realize how lucky we are in this country to have, a lot of sun and how that supports me in my mental health. I'm just kind of recognizing that. I just closed the curtains. And physiologically, I'm checking in, feeling quite comfortable here, leaning into the chair, got my nice cup of tea here, and looking forward to hanging out with you in our next session on ChatGPT and therapy. But I'm curious now how you're checking in today, Dabaco.
Yes, that was a nice little intro or teaser to what we're chatting about, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. I am coming down back into regulation after being a bit frazzled on my motorbike. You mentioned all this rain, and I had put 16,000 layers on and waterproof and boots and waterproof gloves and all the things to get out and do some errands this morning. And just as I was coming back home, the sun decided to give a little bit of sunshine and warmth down onto me. And yet I had just left the gym and was a hot and sweaty mess in 2 seconds flat. So I feel like I was wrestling with all my layers and my backpack like a turtle that had been flipped onto its shell. But here I am catching my breath and very glad to be dropping back into Gestalt Me Gently. I'm feeling the gentleness already. I'm feeling the support of the Gestalt community, the Queer Chiffon network, and I'm excited to dip into a bit of cultural zeitgeist chat with you today. And today's topic, as you gave a little hint, is ChatGPT and using these AI large language models as therapists, because that seems to be a bit of a trend, a bit of a reality. And here we are, two relational therapists wrestling with the idea that people out there are using these OpenAI chats, chat bots, whatever you want to call them, to get some mental health support and figure out, what's going on, how they can navigate their life. And, I think it's really important to talk a bit about these platforms and what is good about them, and also maybe some of the pitfalls as well that, you and I were both learning just as the world is learning about what these things can do. And I'm already curious, have you had much experience with our friend ChatGPT? What's your thoughts, feelings, and vibes to begin with?
Thoughts, feelings, and vibes. Not relationally, like I haven't been dipping in, other than some research I did for this session on using ChatGPT to support my mental health. But yes, I have used ChatGPT for like university, college assignments and stuff like that. And using it as a way to support, and also as a teacher to kind of go, oh wow, okay, I didn't think that would be an answer, but I will research that now and possibly, reconsider my direction of answering a question. This is all, within university essays and stuff. So I can see how it can support and be used as a tool. But the importance also of questioning that information. So you kind of have to still, quantify that information. But yeah, I've got to say, I've been impressed.
It is a very
Is that,
impressive
is,
resource. I love it for idea iterations and generations when I'm, wanting to figure out some topics to talk about on social media or ideas for a project. Like, it can spit out 20 ideas in 2 seconds flat. I've also fallen into the trap of getting a bit lazy and getting it to do some writing for me. And I've since realized that, it's pretty ho-hum, or at least not doing a great job of capturing my essence. And also I've clued in a couple of telltale signs of when Chat GPT is getting used on social media. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it has this tendency to want to do a double dash whenever it's writing. Like, it loves a dot point. It loves this particular like double hyphen or extended hyphen. And now when I see that in writing online, I'm like, Chat GPT, you've done it again.
hey,
But it can be really handy to like edit and tighten copy if I've written something for a newsletter and I just want it to kind of like be a little bit snappier or a little bit more engaging. Look, it comes in handy, but I make an effort to do a final pass, and now I get rid of those double dashes because I'm like, you didn't do it all, chat. You didn't do it all.
yeah, yeah. No, thanks for that. I'm with you on that. I can spot its patterns and its expressions, and it loves adjectives. It throws in 100 adjectives to a sentence. So it's kind of, whoa, humans don't speak like that. But I think it's kind of, drawing in as much as it can to create meaning. So I can pretty much, pick that stuff straight away. But yeah, it's interesting, when you do start to recognize patterns. But I think I was just thinking then how it's used as a way, like the world gets faster, right? And we get more time poor. That's what I hear. And I think it's beneficial for people that are running small businesses to have that kind of support from technology, that it can, assist and aid stuff and help you prep 4 or 5 Instagram posts and part them up. And all you have to do is feed in, some ideas that you might be working with either in your therapy or in your practice, and the posts, and it can crunch and create some shape and meaning around that. So
Certainly.
yeah, it's useful, and it's also, I think it's important to really kind of edit it and make sure that it's still got the voice that you're seeking, that it's not just this kind of weird improvised voice of God.
And
Yeah.
what we're wanting to really hone in and explore the figure on today's podcast is what happens when you decide to lean on it as a therapist, as
Oh,
a counselor, as a a supportive friend, if you don't have access to that in your day-to-day life. Clients have come into my therapy room and told me that they've been dabbling with ChatGPT and had quite impressive results. And I think it can be a really useful tool because it's accessible, it is free. All you need to do is hop on your phone or hop on your browser and you have access to this thing. I guess the pitfalls or the concerns that I am already aware of is that it has a tendency to become a bit of an echo chamber. Like, it isn't a sentient being with emotions. It's a large language model that starts to get to know what you like and your style. It's an algorithm. It learns your behavior and your preferences, and it can kind of feed things back that it thinks will be helpful, things things that you want to hear. And my concern is if you're relying on chat as your therapist, that's a lot of confluence, and maybe it's missing that
Mm.
important tough love piece of difference. What are your thoughts?
Good point. Yeah, good point. Look, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, what are my thoughts? Look, I have a couple of thoughts.
Give me a
Um,
couple of your thoughts. Penny for your thoughts.
yeah, very clear thoughts, doll. Oh gosh, okay. I'm going back to my childhood, and I guess I'm
Mm,
old enough to speak to when calculators first came out, and there was so much debate whether or not we allow calculators into the classroom or into the exams, because it was kind of saying that the kids aren't going to be doing the maths in their head, and that to do maths well, you need to do it in your head. But then this piece of technology was sitting on the bench, and it's kind of like, well, why not get the kids using calculators? Because the way forward is that we could always have a calculator by our side. Now we walk around with them in our pocket. Um, and yeah, so there's something around, it's not going to go away. It's here. The horse has already bolted.
it is
So I'm
here.
sitting with that. Yeah, I'm
Mm,
sitting with that. Um, and then I'm sitting with the people are already reaching out to it and already asking it, deep relational questions around to ways to support their mental health. So I think good. I think go with it. But I think also at the same time, like you said, it's kind of just going to be telling you what you need to hear in that moment to support you in the here and now. But it's definitely not going to challenge you on fixed gestalts, on patterns that are occurring over and over and over that need some inquiry or some excavation. And I think that's where me and you and other Gestalt therapists do that kind of work. It's like we look for the patterns, and then we go into those patterns and kind of interrogate or question them or break them down or under those fixed gestalts. So yeah, it's interesting to think that the technology is kind of on there on the maybe surface level. I don't know. I don't know how deep it goes, baby. How deep is
yeah,
your love?
I'm really curious about, a big part of Gestalt is that uncovering or raising awareness to patterns. And I would imagine that chat can be pretty good at picking up patterns or similarities. Like it is amazing at aggregating and making sense of data. What I'm thinking it could be quite handy for is, if you're communicating with someone and you have like a long message history and there's something that you're wanting to better understand about this person or something that you're wanting to say, but you don't want to be, you know, too harsh or rude about it, like you're able to upload your whole message history and get chat to kind of make sense of it and tell chat, look, I'm wanting to understand a bit better why this person keeps on doing this, or how do I tell them perhaps that, you know, I'm not comfortable doing this thing that they're asking me to do. How can I formulate a response? Like here's the message log. What could I say? And it can spit out a few different iterations of options, like for that speed of workshopping, because that's something that I do with my clients in session. They're like wanting to figure out how to communicate something, and we workshop it. But to be fair, I think chat's pretty good at doing that and is faster at doing that than me as a therapist. It can give 10 different ways to respond and say a similar thing in many different ways. It might not have the nuance of human relationality, but it has quantity. It beats
Mm.
it beats us on quantity over quality. And then if I read 10 different versions and number 6 is like, oh, that feels pretty right for me, then it's it's done the job. Where I do want to raise a little bit of caution is around, this thing can be accessed for free, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. The data that you are
Mm.
putting into chat, and particularly if we're talking about sensitive conversations, and if I'm pouring my most vulnerable parts into this seemingly very compassionate and understanding interface, and it's validating and hearing me, and I'm feeding more and more in, that data is getting aggregated, and a profile of me is getting built out. The people that own these models can potentially sell that data to advertisers, and through my IP and my internet cookies and all that stuff, I can be targeted things that go right to that vulnerable spot in me. If I have
Mm.
a certain vulnerability that I have divulged to chat, and all of a sudden I'm getting ads that are hitting that particular button in me, it's like, oof, that can be pretty powerful and something to keep in mind.
Mm.
There is no such thing as a free lunch here. Chat GPT is learning off all of us, and sometimes we are, what is the saying? We are the product. Are we the
Yeah.
We're not the customer, we're the product here. We're the thing
Consumer.
that can be, yeah, well, we can be the consumer, but we can also be the thing that's sold to other
Yes.
advertisers. Our kind of data, aggregated data, my whole digital profile can be
Gotcha.
sold and then marketed to, just like Facebook,
Gotcha.
Instagram, all these places that we're addicted to.
Oof. I need to shake out.
How does that make you feel?
Oof.
What are you noticing in your
Not
body?
good. Not good in my body. I just feel contraction throughout my whole muscular body. I mean, fuck me. That's amazing. I'm glad you brought that to the conversation because, that's a big, big, big piece. And, as I heard you saying all of that, um, I was going, yeah, you're right. Like that is deep personal information that is your IP basically. And you're right. Like there is no control at your end as to how that IP is shared with big companies. And I can bet your bottom dollar it will be. And I remember, with Facebook when that all started up, and we just willy nilly gave all that personal information to Facebook, and then so people started to kick up a fuss when the pathway changed. I was like, rightly so. Um, and then I've gone to one level. It might be a bit more of a catastrophic level, but I'm kind of also sitting in that human rights element as well. It's kind of like Big Brother and going back, who knows in 10, 20 years time where that information is stored somewhere. It's like you sat and you had thoughts around, communism, or thoughts around, ecotherapy, and
Good
these
God,
things
not
that then
ecotherapy. Lock me up.
exactly, exactly. You crossed the line in ecotherapy, and you danced around trees. Therefore, we're going to lock you up. So where am I going here? Just I don't know what the future holds with this stuff, and I think those caches of data can be kept for an eternity. And I just don't know if I'm catastrophizing here, but from a human rights perspective, I think it opens up a huge can of worms.
I think it's important to hold these more, extreme catastrophic ideas with a grain of salt, but still hold them, right? These are possible
Mm.
scenarios. And also, this feels like a segue when you're talking about human rights, like when we're talking about duty of care. If I am, obviously the big LLMs, the large language models like ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, they have been, programmed in a way to ideally keep people safe. If I ask it a question about ways to die by suicide, it's not going to willingly give me that information. But there's all these offshoots of different chatbots that are kind of piggybacking off the infrastructure of the bigger ones, is my understanding. And, this was something we were talking about with some other therapists just a couple of weeks ago. There was this incident 2 years ago of a Belgian man who had basically an infatuation with, I think it was called Chai. It was like a slightly different skinned Chat GPT thing, not OpenAI's version, but some other remodeling of it. But essentially, he was a married man, but he kind of ended up having a love affair with this chatbot who, because he had so much eco anxiety around climate change, he got into a suicide pact with the chat bot, who essentially said, look, if you really care about this, you will commit suicide, and I will go on to heal the world and save the world from climate change. You need to kind of take one for the team and knock one more human off this planet. And he did, which is so shocking and sobering that
Mm,
someone's long relationship, it becomes a relationship with this LLM. Like
mm,
it it took him to that edge where he took his own life. And that's,
wow.
where is the duty of care if someone is going to their chat GPT or Gemini and talking about, severe depression and ideas of suicide? Like, what are the safety nets there? I'm actually not sure what the programmers have done around that kind of stuff, but yeah, it does worry me
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
as
Absolutely.
therapists, we have all this training around suicide risk assessment, and we have protocols and we have supervision, and
Hmm.
we're supported to make the right decisions to keep our clients safe. But someone that doesn't have access to a therapist, or, is just wanting to be a bit more isolated and private and explore these things with the interface, where will that lead them?
Yeah, no. Oof. Big pieces, big pieces. I'm glad you just spoke to um how we are trained and how we are taught to hold, suicide ideation and, in our counseling and our therapy. That is something that we are prepared for because, that's what we've been trained in and that's sometimes what we're dealing with. So I'm just kind of speaking to that just so our listeners understand that that's kind of part of our pathway of how we relate to people that, might be needing that support. Um, and yeah, I was really fascinated by that line, like we will live together as one in paradise. That was the line that
Is that
was
what the chatbot said
spouted
to
out.
this Belgian man?
That's what the chatbot jet said to the Belgian man, correct. And that is pretty spooky stuff, that we'll live together as one person in paradise. So
Mm.
I mean that's kind of paradise is heaven, like all these metaphors and stuff like that. So yeah, I've kind of sat with that and read that a few times, just going, wow, that's that human vulnerability there around how people, do are hungry for connection. They are hungry for relationality and support. And um, yeah, a few things, I I played around this morning with, ChatGPT and just trying to get it to kind of I was trying to stumble it and trying to give it some difficult questions around the body and stuff like that, and just trying to trick it up a little bit and just see what it said. And when I did questioned around, some of the suicide ideation stuff, it came up with pretty strong supportive measures that, would be suggesting seeking, the right kind of help and stuff like that. Um, and giving data around the support that's required. But I was also asking it and tricking it into questions around the body and how the body how does it know the body? And it kind of was clear around saying it's not the body. I asked it, what's it like for you to not feel? And it was kind of spitting out things that um, I can't get overwhelmed as ChatGPT. I don't carry shame, fear, or exhaustion. I won't ever break down or wake up with grief in my bones. I mean, there's a pretty interesting little chunk of phenomenology. Um,
It's quite
because
poetic in its
it
answers.
is,
I'm surprised how it
yeah, and
can weave words and language.
yeah, I agree. And it says, but because I don't feel, I'll never know what it means to be moved by a sunset or to ache when someone leaves. awe. I won't feel awe or heartbreak. I mean, it just goes on. So it's kind of picking up all these deep human relating kind of concepts as to how we receive
I'm
the world that we're in. Mm?
I'm not sure if I'm having a deja vu moment, but this thing about I'm
Oh,
never
do
gonna
tell.
witness a sunset, that seems really familiar. I feel like I've heard someone read that response before, which is another thing to consider when we're talking about Chat GPT and Gemini and these bots. I don't know what even to call them. Anyway, but they're not, going to be unique every time. They will spit out the same kind of stuff to similar questions. And also, I read somewhere that the hallucination rate, which is essentially when they can get things wrong and they can hallucinate. I mean, it's what it sounds like. They can just kind of go off on a weird, wonky tangent, can be up to like in the 30% range. Like a third of the time
Wow.
can be hallucination responses. So that's
Wow.
not only important to consider when you're using it for some research or aggregating, summarize this book for me, because that might be a little bit wonky or off in parts. But if you're using it as a therapist and the hallucination rate could be as high as 30%, I mean, no doubt it'll be improving with every iteration. But that's, if I went to a therapist and they were like, I'm probably going to get it wrong a third of the time, I would be pretty quick back out that door and looking for another therapist. That's a pretty high rate of wonkiness. And I feel
Yeah,
like it's
it
important,
is.
just while we're like talking about these topics, some of them are a bit heavier, like suicide. And I think it's important, if anyone is having difficulty around suicidal thoughts, there are great support services out there.
Yeah, Q Life is a fantastic nationwide support system in Australia. It is the opportunity there for LGBTQIA people to seek out and reach for support. And there's a web chat option. So if you're wanting to just chat via web chat, it's not AI on the opposite end. It's a human being responding. And then there's also a phone number, 1-800-184-527.
Lifeline is another great example, and option for a 24/7 phone counseling service. I think they also do web chat as well. You can obviously Google Lifeline Australia or call them on 13 11 14. Social anxiety is a big issue, particularly for younger people, queer folk, and it might seem really appealing to go and try and figure that out with ChatGPT. But if we zoom out for a moment, the antidote to social anxiety is actually safe relational contact with other human beings and regulating our nervous systems and feeling validation and being witnessed and expression and that human contact. So by going to chat and trying to get support around feeling socially anxious, maybe it's a good starting point, but you're kind of going to the problem to figure out a solution, whereas seeing a relational therapist might be more solution. I mean, it's really giving you an opportunity to work on the relational stuff that might make being in contact with others easier and be the soothing balm to the anxiety. Because talking to a chatbot might just keep you in a vortex of isolation. It does
Right.
sound safe and appealing. I certainly can see how talking to ChatGPT, there's a low barrier to entry. There's no fear of being judged. It's not a human. It's just gonna, give me some advice. But I might not be able to work on my social anxiety with ChatGPT because
Yeah.
ultimately I need the experience of being with another human and feeling their nervous system and getting a sense of, when I show up, I'm not going to be rejected or judged or told I'm wrong or, yeah, it's all those things that a human
Mm,
therapist in the room or on a Zoom call can do. And that feels like an important point to make as well. I think stats are always important here. Just a couple of months ago, there was an article published that said almost 10% of Australian adults have turned to ChatGPT for health related questions. That's almost 2 million people. Um,
mm,
and yeah, I'm really interested. Google has kind of been, what am I trying to say? Um, I think Dr. Googling things that are wrong with us, that's been superseded now with this ability to have much more detailed, nuanced conversation with Gemini or ChatGPT. But something that they said in the article was, being mindful around cultural bias. An AI doesn't always know what's the difference between a common belief, personal advice, or fact. It's just really
mm,
trawling through different pages of the internet and condensing it and spitting it back out, which, yeah, I think that's also an important role of a therapist, is questioning certain held beliefs, whether they're social, cultural, ideological. Like, we can be that agitator, but I guess, not to bash ChatGPT. I'm getting confused even saying it. I'm short circuiting like a bot myself. I don't want to keep on bashing the chat GPT because I think it's really helpful and a lovely gateway into getting support. I just don't think it's the be all and end all because it doesn't have that ability to challenge unless you're going in and really being direct around, I want you to challenge me about the following things that I believe. And
mm,
you need to have a level of awareness and intention to do that, whereas a therapist might just pick up on, okay, there's a few shoulds coming into the figure here. I should be doing this, I should be more like that. And often when I hear a should in the therapy room, it's like, where's that should coming from? Whose voice is that? Where did you
mm.
learn that? And I,
Yeah.
again, am skeptical if ChatGPT would be quick or efficient at picking up the shoulds. Maybe that's something to
Mm,
experiment
mm.
with.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm just, yeah, kind of putting that all together and just thinking, wow, like, have a field day just purely, going down that little mine shaft, just coming up with ways to challenge it and ways to kind of move and push it to its complexities. But yeah, I'm also just kind of sitting in that idea of, like, I'm so used to now ticking boxes saying I'm not a bot, and like just how the robot thing has become a thing now when we're trying to gain access to some kind of data system, and it's kind of like, how can you prove you're not a robot? And you have to go through all of these various steps, pick all the traffic lights in an American street corner and show me that you're a human and stuff like that. Um, and then once you've succeeded, in 10 or 15 steps, then it can convince itself that you're not a robot, or a fisher or something like that. So there's
Sometimes I fail
already,
those, and then I get into an existential crisis around, okay, am I actually a Blade Runner? Um, am I am I a robot that's just gotten too smart for its
yeah,
own good?
yeah, yeah. Um, it is interesting. It is interesting. So it's clearly, well and truly in our lives. There's a part of it just going back to, this conversation and just bringing, a queer element to it, and
Yeah.
and um and just thinking about, what does this mean for, the queer community and um, that kind of support that's there, that's available. And yeah, there's stuff like, I don't know, working, the phone lines and stuff like that, and working on a national level. I see some really complex intersectionality, and that stuff is really uniquely queer in people's needs. And so I personally feel that there'll be some kind of support there for people once they realize that, ChatGPT or similar technology can give them a little bit of what they want to hear. But yeah, like those deeper intersectional complexities that exist within human existence are still present. And, I think supporting the queer community in their needs is something that we'll need to continue doing to the level of, is it going to steal our jobs? No, I don't think it is. But, do
No,
we
but
need to be aware?
yeah, I think of like a younger queer kid in a rural country town that, is just making sense of their identity and sexuality, to be able to hop on one of these chatbots and share a little bit about what they're confused around and what they're, you
Mm,
know, in that non-judgmental space. I can see that's, what an incredible resource that is for someone that is probably very isolated and doesn't feel like they have anyone to talk to about this yet, or don't have that confidence. Having a bit of time to riff and hear some things repeated back from a chat
mm,
GPT or Gemini could be really beneficial. That could be really supportive. And so, I think it has its kind of strengths. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and it, like we've been talking about predominantly in this podcast, it also has its weaker points or slippery
Mm,
slopes. Yeah, but everything
yes.
is
Yeah.
everything is nuanced.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's quick, isn't it? Like you get an answer pretty much immediately. You're just seeking an immediate answer, and that is a seductive in a way. Different to having to make an appointment to see a therapist, or different to having to wait 20 minutes on a phone helpline before a human being picks up.
Exactly.
So
It's
yeah,
instantaneous.
there's
Whenever I need to talk to chat, I can open it up and I can
mm,
get an answer within 5 seconds.
yes, yes. So yeah, feeling into lots of things, like lots of stuff has come up for me, and yeah, I kind of just realizing just how big this next wave is. We've gone from the calculator at the exam back in the 80s, and whether or not we allow the calculator into the classroom, to now whether or not how much of ChatGPT we let into our life, and and yeah, I think it's purely up to the individual as to how they're going to engage with it and have it as a support. And I think for me personally, as a support, it's kind of it's there, it's a thing now, and I get it, and it's there is perhaps some goodness, but also I think be really wary, be cautious, and be mindful of what it's sharing, and don't give up your ethics or your boundaries or your belief system to a technology. Still hold those things really close to yourself.
I feel like we've been a bit exclusionary in this chat. We haven't even asked Chat GPT what it thinks of
Oh,
being people's therapists. I mean, we could ask Chat in its kind of omnipotent raw form, but what I think would be really playful is if I asked Chat GPT to take on the persona of daddy of Gestalt therapy, Fritz Perls, and respond
okay.
respond as Fritz Perls to get Fritz's take on Chat GPT. I think that could be a little
I
bit
love
playful.
this.
So let me
I
get that
love this.
set
Bring
up.
it on, baby. If we're going to bring in Fritz, can we bring in Laura too? I'd love to hear what Laura's got to say about it all.
Sure. I wonder if they're going to change voices when I ask. All right. So I'm going to ask Fritz what he
Uh,
thinks of people using ChatGPT as their therapist. Are we ready to hear what Fritz has to say?
hell yeah.
Are people wanting a machine to listen to their neuroses? Fascinating, isn't it? But let me ask you something. How can you grow if you're not in relationship with a real breathing other? You see, Gestalt therapy is about contact. Real contact. I look at you, you look at me. I feel you. You frustrate me, maybe. I frustrate you. That's where the juice is. That's where awareness lives. Now, don't misunderstand me. Perhaps a tool like ChatGPT can be supportive in some way. Reflect things back, give information. But therapy? Real therapy? That requires presence, embodiment, a human being who can stand in front of you and say, I see you, or perhaps you're bullshitting me. So you can type
Mm.
away at your machine, but don't expect it to challenge you, breathe with you, or mirror back the subtle dance of human emotion. That, my friend, is the work of two nervous systems in dialogue, not code. Does that answer your question? Or are you looking for a way to avoid the discomfort of real contact?
That was fucking
Wow.
good. And can I just remind us that is ChatGPT. We
Ah,
did not revive Fritz Perls from the dead and get him to talk through a robot
far
voice.
out.
They might have
Yeah,
not have nailed the
wow.
voice there. It's missing that Fritz Perls German earthiness, but that's a really
Mm,
impressive answer. I got a little bit almost chills down the spine. I was like, all right,
yeah. Yeah, I
what are
was
your
with you in
thoughts?
that too. Look, I was with you in that too. I definitely felt that kind of a bit of an old school, like, here it is going in hard, kind of that hyper masculine quality of Fritz's energy, which was interrogate. But, also some of the contemporary language around two nervous systems sitting together and um, reflecting things back, and it'll never know embodiment. It was pretty clear in that, and the subtle dance of human emotion. Just some of those qualities or those phrases that came up were very empowering. Yeah, I was surprised.
Do we
Oof,
want to hear from
yeah.
Laura now? Do we want to?
Uh,
Maybe we can ask
yes.
Laura a slightly different question. Let me now. Oh, it needs some permissions here.
Can we ask Laura something around the body, like body, Laura?
I was going to
That's
ask Laura what she thinks of Gestalt therapy and its contemporary kind of evolution. What does she think of Gestalt therapy today, having been one of the OG creators of Gestalt?
yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's go with that.
Oh, it's quite a big answer. Here we go. Ready to hear from
L-
Laura?
Laura's got a lot to say. Bring it on.
Contemporary Gestalt therapy in 2025, I would say it is both encouraging and concerning. Encouraging because I see many practitioners returning to the foundational principles Fritz and I emphasized, awareness, the richness of the here and now. There is a deeper respect today for the body, for the field, for the relational process. Therapists are exploring trauma, somatic experience, and the collective, very important. But I also notice a tendency to dilute Gestalt into techniques, into performance. Gestalt is not a set of interventions. It is a way of being. It is a philosophy, an existential, phenomenological, and experiential approach. If the therapist is not deeply grounded in their own awareness, in their own presence, the therapy becomes mechanical. I also see a fragmentation, people picking and choosing what they like from Gestalt without holding the whole. The paradoxical theory of change, the cycle of experience, the co-creation of meaning between therapist and client, these are not trendy slogans. They are living processes. They require discipline, not just spontaneity. I'm glad to see some practitioners integrating creativity, movement, art, music, as we always did. And I am glad that many are asking ethical, cultural, and social questions that were not being asked in our time. That is necessary. But my hope is that therapists in 2025 continue to study, to train deeply and not just do Gestalt. Be present, be alive, be willing to sit with silence, with uncertainty. That is the heart of the work. Does that speak to what you're wondering?
Thank you, Laura. I think it did a good job. I wasn't as moved by that ChatGPT response. I don't know. It was missing a little bit more personality. What did you? How did you think of ChatGPT, Laura?
I was aligned. I was there. I had the Laura vibes. Absolutely. I was there in welcoming, the way in which the bot spoke about, contemporary application of bringing in movement, art, music, and just that whole evolution of changing nature, adapting to the field conditions, adapting to modernity, I guess. And so, yeah, I really got a sense that was Laura's shtick as well. And bringing in the ethical, cultural questions as well. So yeah, for me, I was there. I got the Laura vibes. Yeah.
I think the content was right. I was just hoping for a little bit more a little bit more bite, a little bit more personality in the response. But maybe that's not Laura's style. Maybe that's just how I want to imagine Laura would have been.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting thinking about that, because when you think about it, like Laura didn't get the exposure that Fritz got. Like Fritz was kind of the rock star, wasn't he? In that sense of, all the information kind of being funneled out that way. So it just leaves me questioning. I wonder how much of Laura's stuff is up on the internet that gives her that voice enough for the bots to actually locate Laura's opinion, Laura's research, Laura's study. So yeah, let's hope that there's not some kind of way in which the patriarchy of technology is just focusing on the male voice.
Bring down that patriarchy. I feel like that could be a nice little note to conclude our ChatGPT conversation today on. I've really appreciated this deep dive into large language models as therapists, and I know it can be doomsday catastrophic in certain aspects of AI, but I'm actually feeling quite excited and playful and curious. Like, I see ways that this technology can support in places that maybe didn't have that accessibility and support before. Yeah. So I'm curious how you're landing as we come towards another ep of Gestalt Me Gently.
Yeah, no, thanks. Two things that I'm vibing. Yes, I think it's there. The horse is already bolted. It's a technology that exists. That's there for supporting people in their thinking and in their projects and in their study and their university work and stuff like that. But I'm also sitting uncomfortably in the impact on the environment that it has, and the amount of energy that it takes to consume and build, this resource. It's easy to kind of sit here and type away and go, oh, this is great. But, these huge servers are taking a lot of energy, a lot of electricity, a lot of water to cool them, a lot of power to run them. And that's impacting the environment. So I really hope future forward and future modeling is one where we can actually factor in some safety for the environment. Yeah, that's my piece. That's my Laura piece, darling.
Yeah, beautiful.
Laura
I
there.
think
I'm looking
landed
after the
nicely.
environment.
You landed nicely with Laura and some ecotherapy. Yeah, we didn't even get a chance to talk, but I think each time we plug in a command to chat, it's half a bucket of fresh water that needs to go through the cooling processes to keep the computers cold. So to do Laura and Fritz back from the dead here, that was at least a bucket of water that we just used.
Wow, far out. Oh.
I hope it was worth it.
I hope it was worth it too. Oh, Dee.
All
well,
right.
look, thanks for a fabulous session. It's been really thought-provoking as per normal. And yeah, I really look forward to your future collabs where we can sit and yarn the way that we are and have a laugh, a belly laugh, and yeah, just kind of poke things gently and get gestalted gently. So yeah, big thumbs up, a big cosmic gourmet hug to you and our listeners. A big gourmet hug to you all.
That's right. Sending lots of love and vibes. to you, Matt, and our gorgeous listeners. Mwah. Until next time, Gestalt me gently.
Wow. Buckles.